So ratio is nothing but a fraction. Ratio is nothing but a fraction. So we'll take one by one. So first of all, what is meant by a ratio? A ratio is nothing but a comparison among the similar quantities. Ratio means that fundamentally comparing the fundamental similar quantity, comparison among the similar quantities. అంటే ఇప్పుడు సపోజ్ when you are comparing that incomes of you and your friend, so you are comparing that your income and your friend income. And similarly, if you are comparing the number of students, so boys and girls, so we are comparing the number of boys students and number of girls students as students, right? So comparing, so ratio is nothing but comparing the similar quantities anamata. Ratio anna fraction anna rendu okte. Generally in fraction, how do we write that? 2 by 5. 2 by 5 is called what? Fraction. The same fraction can also be written in the form of what? A ratio, which is nothing but 2:5. So fundamentally a ratio is nothing but what? Fraction only. Okay, so fraction anna ratio anna okate. And next, suppose if I give you 50%, what is 50% of some 120? 50% of 120 anna anukondi, what is the value? 60. 50% means that how do we write? 50% అంటే మనందరికీ తెలుసు కదమ్మా, it is nothing but half. అంటే ఆ సేమ్ పర్సంటేజ్ నే we can also convert it into what? Ratio or a fraction, right? 50% means that we can write it as what? 1 by 2. The same value can be also written as what? 1:2. So here you can clearly see that a percentage can be written as a fraction. The same fraction can be also be written as what? A ratio. అంటే పర్సంటేజ్ అన్న, ఫ్రాక్షన్ అన్న, రేషియో అన్న, ఫండమెంటలీ ఆల్ దీస్ త్రీ ఆర్ సేమ్. మరి ఎందుకు ఇన్ని డిఫరెంట్ టాపిక్స్ అంటే అన్నీ కూడా ఏంటంటే మనం ఏది సింపుల్గా చేయగలమో దాన్ని యూజ్ చేస్తాం, అంతే తప్ప ద టాపిక్స్ ఆర్ నాట్ డిఫరెంట్. ఓకే, సో మనం ఒక 33.33% అనేసి ఒక నెంబర్ ఇచ్చాడు అనుకోండి, ఒక వాల్యూని ఫైండ్ అవుట్ చేయాలనుకోండి. 50% అంటే మనం 50% డైరెక్ట్లో ఆఫ్ చేసేస్తున్నాం. 33.33% ఉంది, అది మనం డైరెక్ట్గా పర్సంటేజ్ చేయలేం కాబట్టి దాన్ని కన్వర్ట్ చేసుకుంటాం, 1/3గా కన్వర్ట్ చేసుకుంటాం. సో అలా మనకి ఏ ప్రాబ్లం అయినా సరే ఏది కన్వీనియంట్గా ఉంటే మనం ఆ విధంగా మనం చెప్పుకుంటాం అనమాట. కానీ మనకేంటి, రేషియో అన్నా, ఫ్రాక్షన్ అన్నా, లేకపోతే పర్సంటేజ్ అన్నా, ఆల్ దీస్ త్రీ ఆర్ సేమ్. A ratio or a percentage or a fraction, all these three are same. Okay, so by the way, first we start from the ratios. Suppose if A and B are two friends and they have 1,000 rupees with them. Okay, A and B are having 1,000 rupees with them. The ratio in which this amount is divided between A and B is 2:3. Then what is the amount taken by A and what is the amount taken by B? You understand? 1,000 rupees is distributed between two friends A and B in the ratio of 2:3. Then what is the share of A and what is the share of B? Okay? In simple words, a ratio is nothing but dividing into parts. So mathematically we can call it as a ratio, but so knowingly or unknowingly we use this ratios concept in our daily life. చదువుకోని వాళ్ళు కూడా యూజ్ చేస్తారు, ఈవెన్ uneducated people use it. Like suppose if you go to a shopkeeper who does not have any education, if you ask them that 1,000 rupees is distributed between A and B in that 2:3 ratio, he can easily tell you that answer. But his language is completely different from our language. So this is mathematical language. So it is what, so he understands the problem in such a way that A is taking 2 parts, B is taking 3 parts. Okay, simple language lo cheppalante ratio is nothing but what? Dividing into parts. Ante ikkada enti, so A is taking 2 parts, B is taking how many parts amma? 3 parts. Total how many parts? 5 parts. So 5 parts value is equal to what? V equate to 1,000 rupees. Then each part is equal to what? 200 rupees. A is taking how many parts? 2 parts. So 2 parts kabatti 2 into 200 is what? 400 rupees. The share of A is what? 400 rupees. And similarly the share of B is what? 3 parts means that 3 into 200 is equal to what? 600 rupees. Okay, so in ratio we can divide the given ratio into parts, different parts. Okay, a ratio can have that any number of terms. It can have 2 terms, 3 terms, 4 terms, any number of terms. These are called terms. 2:3 అని అన్నాం. 2:3 అంటే 2 is one term and 3 is another term. సో వీటిని టర్మ్స్ అని అంటాం. సో ఎన్ని టర్మ్స్ అయినా ఉండొచ్చు, 2 టర్మ్స్ ఉండొచ్చు, 3 టర్మ్స్ ఉండొచ్చు, ఏదైనా ఉండొచ్చు. సింపుల్గా ప్రాబ్లమ్ రేషియోస్లో చేయాలంటే డివైడ్ ఇట్ ఇంటూ పార్ట్స్, డిఫరెంట్ పార్ట్స్. ఓకే, సో వాట్ ఈస్ ఎ రేషియో? రేషియో ఈజ్ నథింగ్ బట్ కంపారిజన్ అమాంగ్ ద సిమిలర్ క్వాంటిటీస్ అన్నమాట. సో డెఫినేషన్ ఈజ్ నాట్ ఇంపార్టెంట్. అండ్ నెక్స్ట్ రేషియోస్ ప్రాబ్లమ్స్ ఇస్తే మనం ఎలా చేస్తాం? పార్ట్స్గా డివైడ్ చేసుకొని చేస్తాం. అయితే బిఫోర్ వీ do problems on ratios, there is some theory part related to the ratios and the types of ratios and what is meant by proportion. First we'll see that and then we'll do the problems of it. Suppose if you take that ratio A is to B, if you take the ratio A is to B, and the ratio A is to B, A is called, so A is what? First term, B is what? Second term, right? For a two term ratio, the first term is called antecedent, the second term is called consequent. You need to know these terms, you need to keep it in your mind. Make you terms another terminology another teliyalam. What is meant by antecedent and what is meant by consequent? Please note down this. For a two term ratio A is to B, A is called antecedent and B is called what? Consequent. A is called antecedent and B is called what? Consequent. Okay ma? And also we have different types of ratios ma. Ratios lo manaki types unnai annamata. అది కూడా మీకు ఎగ్జామ్లో అప్పుడప్పుడు అడుగుతున్నాడమ్మా. సో ఫస్ట్ వి సీ దట్ డిఫరెంట్ టైప్స్ ఆఫ్ రేషియోస్. ప్లీజ్ నోట్ ఆన్ దట్ డిఫరెంట్ టైప్స్ ఆఫ్ రేషియోస్. Different types of ratios. The first one is write the different types of ratios. The first one is duplicate ratio. Duplicate ratio. The first type of ratio is what? Duplicate ratio. So what is meant by duplicate ratio? The first type of ratio is duplicate ratio. Duplicate ratio is nothing but taking the square of the given terms. ఒక రేషియో ఇస్తే ఆ రేషియోలో ఆ ఇచ్చిన టర్మ్స్కి స్క్వేర్ నెంబర్స్ తీసుకోవడం. అంటే ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ద డూప్లికేట్ రేషియో ఆఫ్ ఏ ఈస్ టు బి ఈజ్ నథింగ్ బట్ వాట్? ఏ స్క్వేర్ ఈజ్ టు బి స్క్వేర్. ఎన్ని టర్మ్స్ అయితే అన్ని టర్మ్స్కి అన్నింటికి కూడా ఈచ్ అండ్ ఎవ్రీ టర్మ్ కూడా మనం స్క్వేర్స్ తీసుకుంటాం. డూప్లికేట్ రేషియో ఈజ్ నథింగ్ బట్ వాట్? టేకింగ్ ద స్క్వేర్ ఆఫ్ ద గివెన్ టర్మ్స్. Okay, for example you will be asked question like this: find the duplicate ratio of 21 is to 22 is to 23. Find the duplicate ratio of 21 is to 22 is to 23. So tell me. Yeah, squares చెప్పండి అమ్మా. 21 square is squares తీసుకోవడమే దీనికి. 21 square is what? 441. 22 square is 484. 23 square is 529. Okay, duplicate ratio, the first type of ratio is duplicate ratio. It is nothing but what? Taking the square of the numbers. Okay, next subduplicate ratio. The second type of ratio is subduplicate ratio. Subduplicate ratio. What is subduplicate ratio? Square root. Duplicate and squares తీసుకున్నాం కదా. Subduplicate means that square root. Taking the square root of the given numbers. Subduplicate ratio is taking the square root of the given terms. Square root of A is to square root of B. For example, what is the subduplicate ratio of Tell me the subduplicate ratio of 121 is to 144 is to 169. 11 square, 12 square, 13 square. Ante answer is what? 11 is to 12 is to 13. Answer is 11 is to 12 is to 13. We take the square root of the given numbers. So the first one is duplicate ratio, second one is subduplicate ratio. Third one is what? Third one is triplicate ratio. Third one is triplicate ratio. What is meant by triplicate ratio? Yes, taking the cube of the numbers. Triplicate ratio is nothing but what? Taking the cube of the numbers. Find the triplicate ratio of 10 is to 11 is to 12. Ten is to 11 is to 12. Tell me 10 cube is 1000. 11 cube is 1331. 12 cube is 1728. Okay. Next, subtriplicate ratio. A is to B means that what? Cube root of A is to cube root of B. Okay, so if I ask you that what is the subtriplicate ratio of 512 is to 729 is to 1000? 512 cube root, take the cube root. 512 is cube of which number? 8. 729? 9. 1000? So answer is what? 8 is to 9 is to 10. So first one is what? Duplicate ratio. Chapandamma. First one is duplicate ratio. Mean? Squares. Next. Yeah. Next. Subtriplicate means that cube root. Next, fourth one and fifth one is very, very important. Fourth one is very, fourth one, not fourth one, fifth one. Fifth one is inverse ratio. Inverse ratio. Inverse ratio is very, very important. Basically, what is an inverse? See, suppose if I take that A inverse. A inverse mean that what? What is A inverse mean? 1 by A. Inverse ante ee vidhanga manam represent chestam kadamma. So it is nothing but what? 1 by A. So inverse ratio of A is to B anna anukondi. It is nothing but what? A inverse is to B inverse. That is nothing but what? 1 by A is to 1 by B. Inverse ratio of A is to B means that what? 1 by A is to 1 by B. Now, in inverse ratio, ఒకసారి చూడండి అమ్మా. సో వాట్ ఈస్ ద ఇన్వర్స్ రేషియో ఆఫ్ 2 is to 3 అని అడిగాం అనుకోండి. ఇప్పుడు ఇన్వర్స్ రేషియో అంటే ఎలా రాస్తాం? వి రైట్ ఇన్వర్స్ రేషియో ఇస్ 1 by 2 is to 1 by 3. బట్ ఎప్పుడైనా సరే గుర్తుపెట్టుకోండి, we have the fractions ratio, but if you look at the in options you can always see that integer ratios. మనకు ప్రాబ్లంలో కూడా ఇలా ఇస్తాడు, 1000 rupees is divided in the ratio of 1 by 2 is to 2 by 3 is to 5 by 4 ఇలా ఇస్తాడు. ఎప్పుడైనా సరే if you see the fractions as ratios, okay, if your ratio is in fractions, then immediately you have to convert into normal ratio. How do you convert? No, cross product. So you take the LCM of the denominators, multiply each term with that LCM. గుర్తుపెట్టుకోండమ్మా, ఎప్పుడైనా సరే ఒక రేషియో ఫ్రాక్షన్స్లో ఇస్తే యూ టేక్ ద డినామినేటర్స్ ఎల్సిఎం ఆఫ్ ద డినామినేటర్స్ ఏవైతే ఉన్నాయో వాటి యొక్క ఎల్సిఎం తీసుకొని మల్టిప్లై ఈచ్ టర్మ్ విత్ దట్ ఎల్సిఎం. Here 1 by 2, 1 by 3. What are the denominator numbers? 2 and 3. What is the LCM of 2 and 3? 6. Multiply each term with that 6. Then 2 3s are 3 2s. So what is the value? 3 is to 2. So what is the inverse ratio of 2 is to 3? We are getting 3 is to 2. So which means that you please remember that if A is to B is there, the inverse ratio of A is to B is what? B is to A. Directly you can write the inverse ratio if it is a 2-term ratio only. Ade A is to B is to C ante you can't write it as C is to B is to A. Only for 2-term ratio A is to B అని అంటే మనం ఏం చేయాల్సిన అవసరం లేదు, just flip that ratio. 2 is to 3, what is the inverse ratio? 3 is to 2. What is the inverse ratio of 16 is to 17? 17 is to 16. When you have the 2 terms, then immediately you can write the inverse ratio as B is to A. Next, suppose if I ask you the inverse ratio of, find the inverse ratio of two is to 3 is to 4. 2 is to 3 is to 4. Find the inverse ratio of 2 is to 3 is to 4. Yeah. Say, how do first we write this 2 is to 3 is to 4? Inverse ratio means that 1 by 2 is to 1 by 3 is to 1 by 4. Right? So then after that we need to write it in the normal integer terms. How do we write it in integer terms? You take the LCM of the denominator, multiply each term with that LCM. So 2, 3, 4, what is the LCM? 12 is the LCM. So multiply each term with 12 into 12 into 12. So 2 6 is 6, 3 4 is 4 and 4 3s. So what is the inverse ratio of 2 is to 3 is to 4? 6 is to 4 is to 3. See here I am not writing that 4 is to 3 is to 2. Only if there is 2-term ratio 2 is to 3 we can write it as 3 is to 2. Otherwise we need to do it like this. Okay, ma? Right. You can see here. So there is also a shortcut for this one. 2 is to 3 is to 4. Directly if you want to write the inverse ratio of these numbers. When you are writing the first term of the inverse ratio, first term, so we have 3 terms here, right? The first term is nothing but the product of the remaining 2 numbers. 3 into 4 is what? 12. So next if you are writing the second term, it is nothing but product of the remaining 2 numbers. 2 into 4 is what? 8. The third one is what? Product of the remaining 2 numbers. Okay, first when you are writing the first term, it is nothing but product of the remaining 2 numbers. Middle term, when you are writing that, product of the first one and third one. ఏ టర్మ్ అయితే రాస్తున్నామో అది కాకుండా రిమైనింగ్ ఏ 2 టర్మ్స్ ఉన్నాయో ఆ 2 టర్మ్స్ ప్రొడక్ట్ తీసుకుంటాం. థర్డ్ టర్మ్ ఇఫ్ యూ ఆర్ టేకింగ్ దట్ ద రిమైనింగ్ 2 టర్మ్స్ ఆర్ వాట్ 2 into 3. So 12 is to 6, 8 is to 6. So you can simplify it. 2 6s are 2 4s are 2 3s are 6 is to 4 is to 3 is the answer, right? So this is inverse ratio. Inverse ratio is nothing but 1 divided by the given numbers. When 2-term ratio is given, then you can directly write it as, if A is to B is given, then you can directly write it as B is to A. So this inverse ratio is important because the complete concept of time and distance and time and work will be done by using this method, right? Over. Next number, next compound ratio. Compound ratio. The next type of ratio is compound ratio. Compound rate. In simple words, compound ratio is nothing but product of all the given ratios. Compound ratio is nothing but product of all the given ratios. Okay, so which means that If I ask you that what is the compound ratio of A is to B, comma C is to D, comma E is to F. Find the compound ratio of the ratios A is to B, C is to D and E is to F. It's nothing but product of all the ratios. Any ratios aithe istado, anni ratios. For the given ratios, we take the product of all the ratios. Compound ratio means that A by B into C by D into E by F. Compound ratio for the given ratios is nothing but product of all the given ratios. A is to B, suppose if 3 ratios are given, A is to B, C is to D, E is to F, then compound ratio is nothing but a ratio can be written as fraction, right? So A by B into C by D into E by F. Find the compound ratio of 2 is to 3, comma 4 is to 5, comma 6 is to 8. 2 by 3, 4 by 5, 6 by 8. Compound ratio means that what? Product of all the numbers. So 4 1s are 4 2s are, right? So 2 2 get cancelled. 3 1s are 3 2s are. So 2 by 5. So 2 by 5 or 2 is to 5 is the answer. So a compound ratio is nothing but what? It is product of all the given ratios. So total we have 6 ratios. Mottam 6 type of ratios unnai. First one is what? Duplicate ratio mean square of the numbers. Next, subduplicate ratio, square root of the numbers. Next, triplicate ratio, cube of the numbers. Next, subtriplicate ratio, cube roots. Next, inverse ratio. So A is to B, then inverse ratio ఏమవుతుంది? B is to A. If it is a 2-term ratio, then immediately you can write it as B is to A. So 3 terms అయితే we take the LCM of the denominators, multiply each term with that LCM. Right. Next, compound ratio is nothing but what? Product of all the given ratios. Okay. So we have seen that what is meant by ratio and different types of ratio. Now we will see that what is a proportion. What is meant by proportion? A proportion is nothing but when 2 ratios are equal, then we say that the terms are in ratio, the terms are in proportion, which means that proportion is basically nothing but equality of ratios. Equality of ratios. For example, 2 ratios are there. A is to B is one ratio, C is to D is another ratio. A is to B is one ratio, C is to D is another ratio. If these 2 ratios are equal, then we say that the terms are in proportion. A, B, C, D are in proportion. In simple language, proportion is nothing but what? Proportion is nothing but equality of ratios. Ratios equal ga unte, then we say that the terms are in proportion. For example, if A is to B is taken, then A is to B is equal to A is to B is one ratio, C is to D is another ratio. If we equate these 2 ratios, then we can say that A, B, C, D are in proportion. So how do we write this A is to B? Can I write it as A by B? Because the ratio is nothing but a fraction, right? C is to D means that what? C by D. Now you cross multiply it, then it becomes what? AD is equal to BC. AD is equal to what? BC. So the most important thing is when 2 ratios are in proportion, then immediately you can see that AD is equal to BC mean that what? AD is equal to BC mean, see this, A into D is equal to what? B into C. A into D is what? Extreme terms. So that's why we can call it as product of extremes is equal to product of extremes is equal to product of means. BC mean that what? Product of means. Okay. So you will be given like this some numbers. 4, 5, 6. So if 4, 5, 6, some x, let's say that x. 4, 5, 6, comma x are in proportion. The problem will be given like this. If 4, 5, 6 x are in proportion, then what is the value of x? What is the value of x? Whenever the terms or the given values are in proportion, then immediately you should take it like this. The first ratio is what? 4 is to 5. Second ratio is what? 6 is to x. These two are what? Same. Proportion. Proportion means that the product of means is equal to what? Product of extremes. So immediately we should take that. We should consider that. Okay, you understand it. When the terms are in proportion, then immediately we should take it as product of means is equal to what? Product of extremes. So 4 into x is equal to what? 5 into 6, 30. So therefore x is equal to what? 30 by 4, 7.5. Okay. So what is the term here? If this 4, 5, 6 x are in proportion, then what is the value of x? Means that what is the value of x? 7.5. So proportion ante immediately you should remember this one. The product of means is equal to what? Product of extremes. Of course, it can be also represented as A is to B is equal to C is to D kada. Equality of ratios is represented by is as symbol. Ee vidhanga symbol represent chestam. Okay. If this symbol is like this, which means that they are in proportion. We can also represent it as A is to B is equal to another place lo manaki when two ratios are equal, then you can use this symbol. The symbol is as, this is called is as, is nothing but what? Equality of ratios. Okay. So when A is to B is as C is to D, it means that what? A, B, C, D are in proportion. And we also have the names for each term. A is the first proportion. A is called, in this A is called first proportion. B is called second proportion. C is called third proportion. D is called fourth proportion. So because sometimes the problem will be asked like this, what is the third proportion of the number? What is the fourth proportion? So we will consider from this. Okay, you please note down this proportion. Proportion means that when two ratios are equal, we say that the terms are in, proportion. We say that the terms are in proportion. Okay. So next one is continued proportion. Proportion, the extension or application to proportion is continued proportion. Continued proportion. So what is a continued proportion? It is also a type of proportion, but continued proportion. So what is meant by proportion? Proportion means two ratios are equal. Continued proportion is also a type of proportion, but it is a continued proportion, which means that what is continued here? The middle term is repeated. So which means that when you take a ratio A is to B, the second ratio is B is to C, which means that the middle term is repeated. So continued term means that the first ratio, the second term, in the second ratio, the first term, both are same. Okay. In the first ratio, the second term, in the second ratio, the first term, both are same. Then it is called continued proportion. Same, it is a proportion only, but the middle term is same. Now again, so since it is in proportion, then immediately what we can say that product of means is equal to product of extremes. So product of means that what? B into B is B square, A into C is what? AC. So therefore, B square is equal to AC means that B is equal to what? Root AC. B square value is equal to AC. Then B value is equal to what? Root over AC. It's very, very important. B is, say here the terms are called like this. If in continued proportion, A is called first proportion. A is called first proportion. And B is called, this term, the repeated term is called mean proportion. It's very, very important number. B is called mean proportion. and C is called third proportion. C is called what? Third proportion. Okay, we are asked to find out the mean proportion. What is the mean proportion of the two numbers? So, mean proportion of the two numbers is nothing but square root of AC. Okay, first you write down this. Continued middle term mean proportion answer. So, the question will be asked like this. So, whenever two numbers are given, so two numbers are given to us and we are asked to find out that what is the mean proportion of those two numbers. Suppose the question, so it's a very important question number. The problem would be asked like this, either third proportion or the mean proportion. Suppose if I ask you that what is the mean proportion of 4 and 9. Two numbers are given to us and we will be asked to find out what is the mean proportion of those two numbers. Mean proportion of 4 and 9. Mean proportion of 4 and 9 means that mean proportion of two numbers is what? Square root of product of those two numbers. మీకు two numbers ఇస్తాడు, ఆ two numbers కి మనకి ఏం అడుగుతాడు? Mean proportion అడుగుతాడు. It is nothing but what? Square root of product of those two numbers. So mean proportion of 4 and 9 means that what? Root over 4 into 9 is equal to what? Root 36 is equal to 6. Okay, so you can write this example. Find the mean proportion of 4 and 9, which is nothing but square root of product of two numbers. ఏం లేదమ్మా, మెయిన్ ప్రపోర్షన్ ఇస్ నథింగ్ బట్ టూ నెంబర్స్ మనకి ఇస్తాడు, టూ నెంబర్స్లో మెయిన్ ప్రపోర్షన్ అడుగుతాడు అనమాట. మెయిన్ ప్రపోర్షన్ అంటే స్క్వేర్ రూట్ ఆఫ్ ప్రొడక్ట్ ఆఫ్ దోస్ టూ నెంబర్స్. సో A is called first proportion, B is called mean proportion, and C is called third proportion. This is continued proportion. So we have learned that the first what is the ratio and what are the different types of ratio, and then what is the proportion, and also what is the proportion, what is the different types of proportion. It is continued proportion. So now we will directly solve the questions related to the ratios and proportions. Right, starting from this, find the fourth proportion of 60, 72 and 25. Next problem, first problem. Find the fourth proportion of 60, 72, 25 and the next number. So fourth proportion means that how do we find out it? Proportion means that we know, right? AD is equal to BC. So when A, B, C, D are in proportion, then we say that BC is equal to AD. So here the given numbers are what? 60, 72, 25. Let's say that the next number is X. Then product of means is equal to what? Product of extremes. Proportion, when you see the word fourth proportion, where do you see that fourth proportion? In the proportion words, right? First proportion, second, third and fourth proportion. So when you are taking the problems of proportion, then immediately you remember this concept. Product of means is equal to product of extremes. 60 into X is equal to what? Product of extreme, that is 60 into X is equal to 72 into 25. So 12 5 is a 60, 12 6 is a 72. So 5 1 is a 5 5 is a. So therefore X is equal to what? 6 into 5 is equal to 30. So what is the fourth proportion? The fourth proportion value is equal to 30. What is the mean proportion of 48 into and 147? Mean proportion of 48 and 147. How do you find out the mean proportion? Square root of the product of two numbers. What is the mean proportion of 48 and 147? Okay. So when two numbers are given, any two numbers, let's say that X and Y, or any two numbers, mean proportion means that what? Square root of product of those two numbers. It's very important. Mean proportion is very important. What is the mean proportion of 48 and 147 means that square root of 48 into 147. This we all know that. What is the next step? Do we multiply 48 and 147? Yes, of course we can multiply, but so it takes time, right? So how do you find out the square root of the numbers? So we can also write the numbers as a prime numbers product. Okay, so if the numbers are very complicated numbers or big numbers, first you write the given numbers as product of prime numbers. Right, first you take that 48. 48 can be written as a product of prime numbers. How? Already చెప్పాను product of prime numbers ఎలా రాయాలో. So one method is you can take that all uh, like, so otherwise if you are good at tables, you can use that 48 can be written as 16 threes of 48. So 16 threes are means that I write that 16 means that 2 power 4 into 3, right? And similarly, if you look at that 147 can be written as 721 the 7 threes. So which means that what, 7 into 7 into 3. So 7 square into 3. Finally, if you write this 2 power 4 into 3 into 3 is what, 3 square into 7 square. Now these square root of something, square root of anything. So suppose square root of x power n, which means that what, which is nothing but x power n by 2. Okay, square root means that what, power divided by 2. Okay, the power we are dividing with 2. So here 2 power 4 means that what is the square root of 2 power 4? So first you take this one, 2 power 4. Each term will go one by one. First one is 2 power 4. What is the square root of 2 power 4? 2 square, right? Next. What is the square root of 3 square? 3. What is the square root of 7 square? 7. So 4 3s are 12, 12 7s are 84. So 84 is the answer. You got it? When you are doing the calculation, you don't need to multiply 48 into 147. Okay, 48. ఇలా రాసుకోవచ్చు అమ్మ, 2 12s, 2 6s, 2 3s. Prime numbers product గా రాయాలి కదా. So when you write the prime numbers product, it means that what, already in number system for most of the concept we did the same thing, right? So we use the application of writing the number as a product of prime numbers. Same application I am using here. For any number, if you write that, if you're supposed to write it in the prime numbers product, just divide that each and every number with the prime number, any prime number. See here 48 is written as what, 2 power 4 into 3. This mean proportion is very, very important number. What is the third proportion of 6 and 12? There are two numbers. So for these two numbers, we need to find out the third proportion. So if A and B are two numbers, what is the mean proportion of two numbers? Yes, mean proportion means that square root of AB. So same, when two numbers are given, what is the third proportion? Third proportion for two numbers, when will it come? If it is in continued proportion. So AB, BC, then B square is equal to AC. Okay, so third proportion means that what? C is equal to what? B square by A. Okay, so for two numbers, when two numbers are given, the third proportion is B square by A. B square by A means that what? Second number square divided by first number. So when two numbers are given, if two numbers are given, there are two questions we have. One is finding out the mean proportion. Second one is what? Finding the third proportion. Finding out the mean proportion means that take the square root of product of two numbers. Finding out the third proportion is nothing but what? B square by A. So which means that second number square divided by first number. So please remember these two. For two numbers, mean proportion is nothing but product of square root of product of those two numbers. Third proportion means that square of the second number divided by first number. You please note down this. For two numbers, when two numbers are given. Okay, now tell me the answer for this. Third proportion of 6 and 12, Amma. Third proportion of 6 and 12. Two numbers. So how do you find out the third proportion? B square. Suppose if you take the first number as A, second number is B. The third proportion means that what? Third proportion mean B square by A, right? B square by A means that what is B square? 12 into 12 divided by 6. 6 2s are 12 into 2 is what? 24. Please understand the problem first. The consequent of inverse ratio of 5 and 1 by 4 is to 2 and 1 by 3 is 63. Then find the antecedent of that ratio. Antecedent and consequent. The very beginning of ratios topic, I told you what is meant by antecedent and what is meant by consequent. For a two-term ratio, if there are only two terms in a ratio, then the first term is called what? Antecedent. You can see it in your notebook. Please turn back your pages and see that. For a two-term ratio, the first term is called antecedent and second term is called what? Consequent, right? So the consequent of inverse ratio of 5 and 1 by 4 and 2 and 1 by 3 is given as 63. First of all, the given ratio is what? A mixed fraction. So first we convert into a normal ratio. 4 5 is 20, 20 plus 1 is what? 21 by 4. 3 2 is 6, 6 plus 1 is what? 7 by 3. Okay. So this ratio is in terms of fraction. First I wanted to write it in terms of what? A normal ratio. How do you convert a fractional ratio into an integer ratio? దాన్ని సింప్లిఫైడ్ ఫార్మ్లో ఎలా రాసుకుంటాం? మీకు ఆల్రెడీ చెప్పాను, ఫ్రాక్షన్స్ ఎప్పుడైనా సరే ఒక రేషియోలో ఉండేటప్పుడు how do we convert into a normal ratio? Take the LCM of the denominators, multiply each term with that LCM. I told you already, right? Suppose if 1 by 2 is to 1 by 3 is to 1 by 4 is there. Okay, ma. Inverse ratio lo manam nechukunnam. So whenever a ratio is in terms of fractions, then you take the LCM of the fractions, multiply each term with that LCM. Okay, so here 4, 3, 12 is the LCM, multiply each term with the 12. Okay, similarly here 21 by 4 is to 7 by 3 means that what is the LCM of the denominators? Take that LCM of the denominator, 4, 3. What is the LCM? 12. Multiply each term with that 12. Then 4 3 is 3 4 is 3 into 21 is what? 63. 7 into 4 is what? 28. Okay, there is one more thing. So when two term ratio is there, 21 by 4, 7 by 3. Okay, only at two terms మాత్రమే ఇచ్చేటప్పుడు immediate గా రాయాలంటే ఇలా కూడా రాసుకోవచ్చు అమ్మ. So you cross product, take the cross product of the number. 21 into 3 is what? 63. 7 into 4 is what? 28. You understand it? So if you want to write it as a normal simplified ratio, you simply multiply these two terms and these two terms. Otherwise, standard procedure is what? We take the LCM of the denominators, multiply each term with that LCM. Okay, so the procedure is important because if two term ratio is given, then we don't have any problem. But 3 term, 4 terms ratio is given, then obviously the only thing we should do is what? We take the LCM of the denominators and we multiply each term with that LCM. By the way, so finally, what is the simplified form of 5 and 1 by 4 is to 2 and 1 by 3? 63 is to 28. Next, see the consequent of inverse ratio of this one. So which means that what is the inverse ratio of this 63 is to 23? So this is the simplified ratio of 5 and 1 by 4 is to 2 and 1 by 3. For this, what is the inverse ratio? What is the inverse ratio? Inverse ratio is what? 28 is to 63. Inverse ratio is what? 28 is to 63. It is given that the consequent of this inverse ratio is given. So in A is to B, A is called antecedent, B is called consequent, right? So what is given? Consequent is given. 63 parts is equal to what? 63. So directly the consequent ratio is what? The consequent term is what? 63. Now which term we need to find out? Find the antecedent of the ratio. In this ratio, what is the antecedent then? 28. So answer is 28. So this is called antecedent and this is called consequent. So we are asked to find out the antecedent. So that's why the value is equal to what? 28. If A is to B is equal to 2 is to 3 and B is to C is equal to 4 is to 5, then find the ratio of A is to B is to C. See, it is given that A is to B ratio is what? 2 is to 3, B is to C value is equal to what? 4 is to 5. Then from this we need to find out A is to B is to C. First of all, let's see that A is to B is equal to, suppose let's say that 4 is to 5. B is to C is equal to some 5 is to 6. Then what is A is to B is to C value? Can you tell me that A is to B is to C value? This is called single equivalent ratio. which, which means that if the terms are repeated, A is to B value is equal to 4 is to 5, B is to C value is equal to, suppose if I give it as 5 is to 6. From this, can you find out that A is to B is to C value? What is that? E example first this one. We'll see this one later. So first you tell me the answer for this one. If I give you that A is to B value is equal to 4 is to 5, B is to C value is equal to 5 is to 6. What is A is to B is to C value? Chappanamma. A is to B 4 is to 5, B is to C 5 is to 6. Then what is A is to 5, B is to C? 4 is to 5 is to 6. See, B value here it is same, right? Here we have 5 and here we have 5. So we don't have any problem to write the single equivalent ratio. So B value A is to B is to C. B value here 5, here 5. So I can directly write it as 4 is to 5 is to 6, right? But if you look at this one, B value here 3 is, in the first ratio we have the term 3, in the second ratio we have it as 4. These two terms are different. Okay. So when you want to write that A is to B is to C, the B value should be same in the first one and the second ratio, right? Here in this example we have the same term, but here it is a different one. So then what should I do? Yeah, so we need to equate these two values. B value must be same, right? Then only I can able to write that A is to B is to C value. So how do I write that B values same? How do I make it as same? Here 3 and 4, right? So I need to make these two values same. So here for the first ratio you multiply with this term 4 and for the second ratio you multiply with 3. Simply you take this term here and this term here. You understand? Then what happens if you look at this one? The whole ratio we need to multiply with which term? 4. 4 into 2 is to 3 means that 4 2s are 8, 4 3s are 12. And similarly 3 4s are 12, 3 5s are 15. Now you can see that B value is equal to what? 12 in the first ratio, 12 in the second ratio. So finally A is to B is to C means that what? 8 is to 12 is to 15. You understand it? This is how we equate the constant term B value, right? So there is a shortcut for this one. When you write this value, when you want to write it in directly, A, B, C. First ratio is what? 2 is to 3. Second ratio is what? 4 is to 5, right? Then A is to B is to C means that first you multiply these two terms. First two terms. So this one, you first write that A is to B value is what? 2 is to 3. Next B is to C value means that what? 4 is to 5. A is to B is to C means that first you multiply these two terms, which means that what? The first terms of both the ratios. 2 into 4 is what? 8. Next, now you multiply these two. 3 into 4 is what? 12. And the last one is what? Product of all the last terms. So 3 into 5 is what? 15. So direct what? We can directly write this. You multiply these two terms first and these two terms next and these two terms. It's a very important. So, direct ga ivakkapayina sare indirect we have the application. So, we'll have to use this application in the problems. So, right, next problem, right? If x is to y is equal to some 4 is to 5, y is to z is equal to 1 is to 6, then find x is to y is to z value. You can use any method, but this method is easy to find out. Okay. So x is to y is to z we need to find out, right? X, y, z. X is to y value is equal to what? 4 is to 5. Y is to z value is equal to what? 1 is to 6. So x is to y is to z means that it's very important you please see this. First you multiply these two terms. X into 4 into 1 is what? 4. Next you multiply these two terms. 5 into 1, 5. And finally, you multiply these two terms. 5 into 6 is what? 30. So 4 is to 5 is to 30. Right. Next one. Try to do it normally. After that, I'll tell you that how to do it fast. It is given that A is to B is equal to 2 is to 3, B is to C is equal to 4 is to 5, C is to D is equal to what? 7 is to 2. Then find the A is to B is to C is to D value. The earlier problems, we have that only two terms, two ratios are given. Now three ratios are given. General method is same, that we have to equate that B value first and then you have to equate the C value. See, first normal method, A is to B is given 2 is to 3. So B is to C is equal to what? 4 is to 5. So from this, first you find out A is to B is to C. How do you find out that B value should be equated, right? How do you equate? So you multiply this term with 4 and this term with 3. First I am telling you the normal method, general method. So 4 2s are 8, 4 3s are 12 and 3 4s are 12, 3 5s are 15. So which means that A is to B is to C value is what? 8 is to 12 is to 15. Next, now you take that C is to D value. C is to D value is equal to what? 7 is to 2. So here C value is equal to what? 15. Here C value is equal to 7. Now you have to equate these two values. How do you equate? Again, same procedure. So you multiply this value with 7 and this complete term with 15. Okay. Then it becomes, now you see this. So you multiply this complete ratio with 7. 7 8s are 56. 7 next 7 12s are 84. 105. Okay. Again 15 7s are 105. 15 2s are 30. So now I am equating the C value. So then what is A is to B is to C is to D value? 56 is to 84 is to 105 is to 30. Okay. So this is the normal method. Now if you want to do it directly, A, B, C, D. A is to B value is equal to what? 2 is to 3. Next, B is to C value is equal to what? 4 is to 5. C is to D value is equal to what? 7 is to 2. Okay. Now we should multiply the terms like this. All of you carefully watch it. So 2 into 4 into 7. First one is 2 into 4 into 7. So multiply all the first terms. 2 4s are 8, 8 7s are 56. I write here. So 2 into 4 into 7. Next, 3 into 4 into 12. 3 into 4 into 7. 3 4s are 12, 12 7s are 84. So which numbers I am multiplying? First I am multiplying in this way and next I am multiplying in this way. Okay. So what are the terms I am multiplying? 3 into 4 into 7. So next terms I am multiplying is 3 into 5 into 7. So 3 into 5 into 7. Okay. So which is nothing but what? 105. So here I am writing that. What are the numbers I am multiplying? 3 into 5 into 7. The final term is nothing but product of all the final terms. 3 into 5 into 15, 15 2s are 30. So 3 into 5 into 2. This you need to practice 2-3 times. If you practice it for 2-3 times, you can easily remember it. 56 into 84 is to 105 is to 30. Okay. The first terms is nothing but 2 into 4 into 7. Next is 3 into 4 into 7. Next is 3 into 5 into 7. Last one is this. Okay. First terms, second term, third term, fourth term. Okay. So practice it for 2-3 times, you remember it easily. It is general method. It is completely your choice that which method you want to choose. It can save your time if you follow this method. Okay, so if it is completed, I'll give you one more sum. So please do it. If P is to Q is equal to 3 is to 2, Q is to R is equal to 1 is to 5, R is to S is equal to, then find P is to Q is to R is to S. So next problem, please note down this. If P is to Q is given as 3 is to 2, Q is to R is equal to 1 is to 5, R is to S is equal to 3 is to 4, then find P is to Q is to R is to S. All of you do it. 9 is to 6 is to 30 is to 40. Yeah? So here it is P is Q, R and S. So 3 is to 2. Next, Q is to R is what? 1 is to 5. 3 is to 4. Okay. What is the first term? Product of all these terms. Okay. So 3 into 1 into 3. So 3 3 is a 9. So next term is what? 2 into 1 into 3. So 2 1 is 2. 2 into 3 is what? 6. Next term is what? 2 5 is 10. 10 into 3 is what? 30. So next term is what? 2 into 5 into 4. 2 5 is 10. 10 4 is 40. So 9 is to 6 is to 30 is to 40. Okay. అయిపోయిందా? So next one. It's not required. This next one. If A is to B is equal to 3 is to 4, B is to C is equal to 8 is to 10, C is to D is equal to 15 is to 17, then find A is to D. Then find A is to D. Now we require that only A is to D. We don't require that A is to B is to C is to D value. Only just we require A is to D value. That is first term and the last term. Okay. See here, one method is that A is to A, B, C, D. A, B, C, D. So A value is what? 3 is to 4. B value is equal to what? 8 is to 10. C is to D is what? 15 is to 17. So from this you know that how do you find out A is to B is to C is to D. So A value, first term is product of all these values. Second term is product of all these values. Third term is this values. Fourth term is this. So in this we require that only first term and the last term. That is your answer. That is one method. There's one more method. So to easily solve this, A is to D. In exam, if multiple ratios are given, if the first term and the last term is only asked, see A is to B, B is to C, C is to D. What is the first term? A is the first term, D is the last term. So remaining terms are repeated. So then A is to D. So A is to D means that, can I write it as A by D? A is to D, A by D both are same. So what is A by D value? So A by B into B by C into C by D. Okay, so then B get cancelled, C get cancelled. What is the term we'll get? A by D only. So if you are asked to find out A is to D value, so A by D or A is to D is nothing but A by B into B by C into C by D. A is to B, B is to C, C is to D. So you multiply the ratios. A by D means that what? First A by B. So what is A by B? 3 by 4 into B by C means that what? 8 by 10 is to into 15 by 17. Okay. So 4 1s are 4 2s are 5 2s are 5 3s are. Here 2 get cancelled. 3 3s are how much? Remaining terms are 3 and 3. So 3 3s are 9 divided by 17. So what is the answer? A by D or A is to D is 9 is to 17. నార్మల్గా చేశారా? A is to B is to C is to D చెక్ చేసుకున్నారా? సేమ్ వచ్చిందా? రాలేదా? అయితే మరొకసారి చేయండి. రాంగ్ చేసినట్టు. యు డిడ్ సంథింగ్ రాంగ్. some calculation error. Please do it again. If first term and the last term is asked, then you can directly multiply the given ratios. Clear? Okay, so let's, before we do this one, so write the next sum. Completed this? So write the next sum. If 2x is equal to 3y is equal to 4z, then find x is to y is to z. Then find x is to y is to z. If 2x is equal to 3y is equal to 4z, then find x is to y is to z value. X is to y is to z value. Try again. So here it is given that 2x is equal to 3y is equal to 4z. All these three terms values are same. So these three terms values can be equal to any value, right? It is given that 2x is equal to 3y is equal to 4z. Moodu kuda denikayina ever. So 2 into some number multiple, 3 into y, 4 into z. So these are multiples, 2 into multiple, 3 into y, 4 into z. So you can equate all these terms to any term, any value. So when you are taking that, the simplest way to do this problem is you take the LCM of the given numbers and equate each term to that LCM. So what is the given condition here? 2x is equal to 3y is equal to 4z. These three values are same. The three values can be taken as any number, okay? But it will be always advisable that if you take that LCM of those numbers, the simplification, the calculation part will be easy, right? If you take the LCM here, 2x is equal to 3y is equal to 4z, right? I should equate to any value, but I am taking the LCM of the numbers and equating to the LCM of the numbers. What is the LCM of this number? 2, 3, 4. What is the LCM? 12. Okay, so now we want that x is to y is to z value, right? You find out that x value, y value, z value. See, 2x value is equal to how much? 12. 2x value is equal to 12. Then what is the x value? 6. 2x value is equal to 12 means that obviously x value is equal to what? 6. Similarly, 3y value is equal to what? 12. So which means that what is y value? 4. And similarly, 4z value is equal to what? 12. So which means that z value is equal to what? 3. So then what is x is to y is to z value? X value will be 6, y value is equal to 4, z value is equal to what? 3. So this is the answer. 6 is to 4 is to 3. Okay. So if this type of problems are given, then immediately you take that LCM of the numbers, equating each term to that LCM. Write the next problem. So all of you tell me the answer. It is given that if 3a is equal to 4b is equal to 6c is equal to 8d, then find a is to b is to c is to d. Okay, so first the given numbers are what? 3a is equal to 4b. So 3a is equal to 4b is equal to 6c is equal to 8d is given. First we need to equate all these terms to LCM of this given numbers. LCM of these numbers is what? See, what are the given numbers? 3, 4, 6, 8. When you are finding out the LCM of the numbers, you can cancel out the fraction factors. 6 is divisible by 3, right? You can cancel out the number. 8 is divisible by 4. We can cancel out the numbers. So the remaining two numbers are what? 6 and 8. 8 is not divisible by 6. Next, we take that 8 2 is a 16. 16 is also not divisible by 6. Next, 8 3 is a 24. 8 2 is a 16 is not divisible by 6. Next number is what? 8 3 is a 24. 24 is divisible by 6. Right? So, which means that what is the LCM? 24. So, we are equating all these values to what? 24. Now, you take one by one, 3a value is equal to 24, which means that what is the a value? 8. 3 8 is a 24. Right. Similarly, 4b value is equal to 24 means that b value is equal to what? 6. 6c is equal to 24 means that c value is equal to what? 4. D value is equal to what? 3. So, what is the answer? 8 is to 6 is to 4 is to 3. 8 is to 6 is to 4 is to 3 is the answer.